welcome to another video. My name is Mia and I am bookish, blind, and Broadway bound, and today we are finally talking about my 2024 favorite books. I know it's late, but I'm hoping that there will be other stragglers as well and it won't be just me. But without further ado, let's just get into it, shall we? The number 10 book on my list was actually the last book that I read last year, and it is Thirsty by Jas Hammonds. I read this because it was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards for Best YA Fiction, and I really was going to do a whole vlog where I read all 20 nominees. And then I remembered that I'm in college now and I can't read as much as I used to, which brings me to an apology. I'm sorry that it's taken me so long to come back into film, but I'm so glad to be here and be able to just talk to you guys about books finally. It brings me a lot of joy, so thank you for sticking with me. But this book follows a girl in the summer of her senior year, and she's trying to get into this secret society at a college called the Serena Society. But as we see her go through the arduous application process of that, where there's lots of tests that she has to undergo, we see that there's a lot of pressure on her, not just as a person, but with kind of just the alcoholism of the situation, where she's being told to just not worry about it and keep kind of feeding into this party culture that is sort of thrown upon teens as you aren't cool unless you do this, that, or the other. And I mean, she's going along with it and it seems fine for a lot of the book, but it turns out that it's really taking a lot of things out of her, and we are starting to kind of see that slowly seeping into the narrative. And I just thought this was so brilliantly written. It's such a good summer read if you are in the mood for that. Whether it's wintertime and you're just cold and you want something that's a splash warmer, or you're in the summer and you want kind of that summer-ween vibe, then this one is really a good pick for you. I feel like it just talks about a lot of challenges and questions that we don't bring up as much, what does it mean to be in a toxic relationship? What does it mean to be cool? How much can you sacrifice before you're not being true to yourself anymore? And I just thought it was so good, and I thought it was such a nuanced exploration where there wasn't really a right or a wrong. It was just sort of the observations of the effects of certain things on young people. And there was also a toxic relationship in this that I found really interesting. I won't spoil it because it's sort of, you don't even know as a reader for a while, or at least I didn't. That could be a reflection of myself. But yeah, I just really liked this. I thought it was so good, and I thought it was so fascinating and deep, and I really just recommend. I feel like people aren't talking about it, even though it was nominated for the Goodreads Choice. So if I were to pick a winner, I mean, I didn't read all the nominees, but I would pick this one. Okay, next up, number 9, we have Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This one was so visceral for me that I will still think back to certain pages of it and just think, wow, oh my goodness, that happened. And it's it's so good. I love John Green. We originally were not melding very well, gelling, that's the word, with The Fault in Our Stars. I didn't love that one, but then I read The Anthropocene Reviewed and An Abundance of Catherines, and I love them. And I just think that he's such a cool, amazing person. And Turtles All the Way Down is about a girl named Asa who is struggling with kind of a spiral of a mix of anxiety and then also OCD. And the portrayal of that is so palpable and so physical that it's almost, for me, was too much as kind of an empath, I guess, where I was sort of questioning whether I should be nervous about certain things that she was being nervous about. So I would say if you're kind of in a bad headspace anxiety-wise right now, you probably don't need more things to worry about. And this book is packed with things that Asa is worried about, from, bacteria to kissing to doing all these different things that for other teenagers seem commonplace, but for her is kind of a roadblock that she has to leap over. And it's beautiful. It's lovely. I adored it. I ate it up. It was so good. Very a difficult read for me personally, but also an educational one. It kind of reminded me of The Weight of Our Sky by Hannah Alkoff, where these are the only 2 books that I've read with OCD representation, and they were both so good. So if you're looking for a read-alike, go and read those 2. Highly recommend. Number 8 is The Spear That Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. If I were to give awards, which I'm not, but if I were, I would give this the most unique book award. I don't even know how to describe it. You kind of just have to dive headfirst into it and read it and love it. Although I would say it's for a particular type of reader, more so than a lot of these other books are. We follow how to summarize this book. There's a person, and this person is told, their perspective is told through second person point of view. So it's like, you wake up, you look out the window and you see this or that. And so that's one of the layers, right? But then that person, that second person, is experiencing the story in sort of a play, which means that you're experiencing it in that way as well. And so we see the third person perspectives, which are talking about these two young men, one of whom is a prince and the other of which is a soldier. I believe it's been a while, forgive me, who is disabled. So like, cheers for disability rep, always, always, always. He, for those wondering, has lost an arm. So, but it's very deeply beautiful the way that they show it. So that's who we're kind of following. They're on this journey to shepherd a god across a land, and there's these three evil emperors that they kind of have to fight against, and it's just beautiful and epic because, right, we see the second person, and then we see the third person for the most of the book, which is talking about these two characters, and then we see some first person interspersed throughout where it's talking about their thoughts, and I really am just confusing myself and you more than helping, but I just think that it's so beautiful, and that's just kind of a sneak peek into how unique this book is. I will say this one deals with a lot. It's a heavy book. It's a kind of a weird, like, outrageous, amazing, sad, beautiful thing that has a lot of trigger warnings that I would look up. It kind of shows like the most extremes of evil, but also the most beautiful of good. And it's a love story, and I love it. It's beautiful. It talks about so many things. I love that it talked about disabilities, and I loved the writing, and I would love to read more from this author. Next up, number 7, Finley Donovan is killing it. I am so late to the game on this one. This was big in 2021, I believe, back when I first discovered BookTube, and it was on everyone's favorites lists, and I have been just dying to check it out ever since. And this one has just such a nice pitch. It's about this mom. She's a single mom, she's a writer, and she's going out to pitch her latest murder mystery. She's already kind of had a stressful day, like she just wants to get this over with. She goes out, she starts pitching sort of what's going to end up happening, how the person in her story is going to get killed. She goes into the details, and it turns out that overhearing from a couple of tables away was a very desperate woman, and she mistook Finley for being a hit woman. And so it's not funny, but it kind of is. This is the genre of cozy mystery where you kind of, there's comedy and darkness sort of swirled together into a beautiful thing, and I need to read more of them. But Finley ends up getting this note, this single mom, this stressed writer that's like, hey, can you deal with this guy? And she's, oh my gosh, like, what am I gonna do? And it's a lot of money to offer it, and so she's just kind of trying to figure things out, and then things sort of slip out of control from there, and she's really just along for the ride, trying to figure things out, trying to figure out, okay, how do I handle this? I don't know, I don't want to spoil too much, but that's the pitch, and then it just gets wilder from there. And I loved the writing of this, I loved the comedy, I loved Finley as a character. There's a tiny, maybe sprinkling of romance. There is a lot of interesting questions about crime, and I don't know, like the lengths that we go. I loved it, I really did. It was a delight. Next up we have Begin Again by Emma Lord, and this one is so good. I'm glad that I could rank these because I feel like it really does deserve the number 6 spot, if not even a higher spot. We follow this girl named Andy Rose, and she is just getting into, I believe, her 2nd semester of college. She has everything planned out. She's very meticulous. She's just kind of ready to go, but she decides that as a surprise for her boyfriend, she's going to transfer over. Well, it's not necessarily a surprise for him, but it's a happy little bonus to the whole situation. She's transferring to a bigger college from her community college, and she's really excited because it was the college that her mom went to, and her mom recently passed away very tragically, and that's a big theme of the story, of grief and kind of living up to your mom's legacy and seeing the memories of her just imprinted in this college. But anyway, she transfers over only to learn immediately that her boyfriend had transferred over to her community college in order to surprise her. So now she feels awful because her boyfriend is in this community college when he was basically virtually at Harvard, before. I can't remember the name. It's a fictional college, I believe. And so she's just kind of, her life is thrown asunder a little bit. She's trying to keep up this long distance relationship with her boyfriend when she thought that they'd be able to finally be together. He's a little resentful of her, which is unfair but true. And she's dealing with this RA who is super grumpy, and of course we're starting to see this sort of grumpy sunshine dynamic, slow burn start to build up. This is a romance, but it's also a book about so many other things. It's a book about expectations. It's a book about treating yourself and others well. And for me, as a senior reading this last year, I'm a freshman now in college, but it just prepared me so well for going to college and knowing that it would be okay, that even if life throws you a curveball, you can always begin again. And I love the romance of this. Emma Lord never misses. I've read 3 books by her by now, and all of them have been 5 stars. So I just highly recommend any book by her, but this one just really hit me. It had the most beautiful themes, and it almost made me cry, but it was so joyous as well. And yes, it is a Taylor Swift reference, or at least I think it is, because on Wednesday in a cafe, these two have a scene. So it's definitely based on that song, and I really loved it. I had a great time. At number 5 is Take All of Us by Natalie Leaf. I've talked about this one before, as well as many others. June and July was a really big month for me reading-wise, but in this, I would say it is a zombie story, but more than it is a zombie story, which I never thought I would say, it's also a story about disability. And so and the people that we leave behind in times of danger, because it's like the survival of the fittest, or all of that old school kind of sayings that have embedded into our society, this idea that we need to kind of fend for ourselves and not look out for each other. That's very heavily focused on in this book. We follow a young boy, and he has epilepsy, if I remember correctly. I'm so sorry if I'm wrong. What I do know is that he has seizures, and he's about to confess to his best friend one day that he has a crush on him, and during that, he ends up having a seizure and like hitting his head, and he wakes up and realizes that he has turned into a zombie. And so yeah, it's kind of crazy, but he now needs to enlist the help of some other disabled kids, because it turns out there was an apocalypse in the city. There was a zombie outbreak, and everybody left him and a few friends behind, everybody including his best friend. And so now him and the other disabled kids are working together. They're supporting each other. They're trying to figure out, obviously he's a zombie now, like what's that about? Let's figure that out. It's very Appalachian Mountains, like horror kind of thing. I'm a scaredy cat, and I didn't find this scary, but I also know that scariness is so subjective. It's so different for everyone. But to me, it felt more like inclusion and disability and ableism than it did about zombies, and I loved it. I have never read a book that made me feel so seen before, that made me understand that I'm not alone in the battle against ableism and for disability representation. It delved into so many interesting topics about what it's like to be a disabled person, what it's like to feel almost as if there's only enough room for so many people in the world, and you don't have that space, and you're trying to carve that out for yourself, but also like how far are you going to go to do that? Maybe they're right, like maybe you do need to be left behind for a greater cause. Like what is the extent to which you can go by yourself before you need someone else's help? It's beautiful. I love it. I highly recommend it. One of those that I feel like is just flying under people's radars, but I need disability rep to be more in the focus, and this really was perfect. It was the perfect example of that. Next up at number 4, we have Heartless Hunter by Christian Ciccarelli. I talked about this as well, and nobody is describing it as this, but I find it important for my maybe theater nerds or classic French literature nerds out there to say that this is a Scarlett Pimpernel retelling. It is gender bent, and it's about this girl. She's the Crimson Moth, right? We see the parallels already. And she goes out, she is a witch, but in this society, witches are being hunted and they are outlawed. So she, by night, must go and kind of do vigilante work to save some of the witches that are being hunted. And so she goes out and saves all of these girls. And during the day, she is undercover as a noblewoman, and she's sort of playing the airhead, the woman who only has a mind for dancing and pretty things, and so that nobody would suspect her as being the same girl who goes out at night and saves lives, right? So it's lovely. And then we also have a witch hunter, and it's been a while again, forgive me, but the Crimson Moth, her name is Rune, she decides that the best thing she can do is to actually try and win him over and court him. It's kind of like a Regency French court type thing. And so she decides, okay, if I get him to fall in love with me, then I can get to know his secrets. Meanwhile, he is trying to find the Crimson Moth because he's a witch hunter, right? And he decides, well, if I can get her to fall in love with me, then I can get to know her secrets. And so it really is kind of a doomed relationship from the start, but of course real feelings start to ignite between them, and it's so good. The romance is amazing. The commentary about how women are seen in society is amazing. Gideon, the love interest, he has his own things going on that are so interesting. I love this. I know it's on a lot of people's favorites list. I loved it, and I'm so excited for the sequel. At number 3, we have Icarus by Kay Ingram. Yet another book that has some beautiful, stunning disability rep, not as much in the focus as the 2 others that I have talked about, but still there. This is sort of a riff on the Icarus myth. I would not say a retelling, don't worry, it's not a direct retelling of the myth for those who know how it ends. It's not, everything's gonna be okay, but I guess that's a spoiler in itself, but we hope, right? I hope that that's an encouragement for people to read it who are worried about the ending. But we follow Icarus Gallagher, and he's actually the son of an art thief, and so all his life he's had to help his dad with these heists, and he hasn't been able to get close to anyone or hang out with people outside of school because his dad doesn't want his cover blown, right? So nobody can go over to his house and see all this little art forgery like equipment. I'm sure there's a fancier word for it, but he is so lonely and so starved for like affection and love. And one day he's going into this house to take an art piece, and he runs into someone named Helios. Helios is the Greek word, or the Greek sun god, so there's that little lore for you. And they develop just like a love and a relationship, and it's really just about that, but also about the way that this lifestyle has defined him, has made him almost into a Rapunzel figure, where he's just so ostracized and separate from society that he doesn't know what it is to love someone, and Helios is able to show him that. But of course it's dangerous because neither of their fathers can know, right? Because they're enemies, and his dad is stealing from like Helios's dad, and so it's dangerous and it's beautiful, and the writing is so pretty. And the things that Kay Ingram discusses, it feels like how it is to be a teenager right now. I know we see a lot of books where it's sort of surface level, you know, they're going to parties all the time, they have a million friends, that kind of thing. And even though this is exaggerated, I'm sure that we don't see as many teenagers who are the sons or daughters of art thieves. We are still able to see these beautiful themes that can be so easily applied to teenage life. And so that's why I loved it. And I love Greek mythology, and so I loved that aspect. It was just such a beautiful book. It was told in these little vignette type things where there's just like short chapters that have little titles that hark back to Greek mythology, and it was so beautiful. I almost cried. So I really, really would implore you to read this book. At number 2, we have A Man Called Uwe by Frederick Bachman. Oh my goodness, this was in such close competition with the number 1 pick, because it was so good and it healed something in me that I didn't know needed to be healed. If you've seen the movie with Tom Hanks, that is amazing. The book is better, obviously, but the movie is so good. I actually watched the movie before I read the book. I don't know about, you know, if I had read the book first, would I have liked the movie less? That's okay, I wouldn't have it any other way. But we follow Uwe, and he is a very grumpy, curmudgeonly old man. He just is not happy in the place that he is. We don't exactly know why for a while. We just know that everything in his life is not the way he wants it. And he's very particular about certain things. I don't want to go into exactly how he is dealing with it or what is going on in his life, but he's in a depressive episode and he is struggling, and I would look at the content warnings for that. But anyway, he is sort of going through this when at the most inopportune moments, a little family moves in right next to him with 2 little girls. And little by little, they slowly soften the ice that's in his heart, along with another lovely little cast of strays that he is bringing in, and somehow that just keep coming to his door and asking of him things that he is not used to giving, like love and faith and just all of these different positive emotions that he hasn't had in his life for quite some time. And so we're seeing that even a man of this many years of tragedy, even a man who believes that he can't change, he is slowly beginning to, and his heart is beginning to soften, and he, as well as all of us, has the chance to be loved. And it's such a beautiful story of transformation and redemption and human connection that is so needed, and even the best and the worst of us, I guess. And it's just, there's so much humor, there's so much heart, and I would say that a really good marker of a favorite book for me is if it is both sad and happy, if it makes me laugh and cry almost in the same breath. And that's what this book did for me, and I hope that it can touch everyone else's hearts as well as it touched mine. I think it's the beginning of kind of cozy fiction before it was cozy, and healing fiction before that was a thing. And I would love to read more books by him because I've been kind of chasing this high forever. And I just loved this so much, and I highly recommend. And my very favorite book of the year, without further ado, last but certainly not least, we have Tiger Lily by Jodi Lynn Anderson. I've talked about this before. You guys know the drill. I've been raving about it to anyone who will listen. And I love Peter Pan. I love the idea that growing up is such a necessary yet unbearable thing that we all must go through. I love that there isn't these grown-up shades of good and bad that are thrown onto the characters of this book. They're all just people. They're all just children, as we are all in a way. And every retelling that I've come across tends to do that, where it will say, oh, well, the real villain of the story is Peter Pan, and then the real hero is Captain Hook, and he's the victim. But it's interesting because that's exactly what the classic is warning against, right? It's telling us that there's no way that we can see these people, especially these children, as anything but who they are, not with kind of these black and white, but as people of many shades and multifaceted things about them. And I love the idea of belief in people, in ideals, in magic, in love. I love it. And I think that there were a few things that Peter Pan got wrong, right? But luckily we have Jodi Lynn Anderson to right those wrongs and to write a story for our generation, for the girls of our generation, so beautifully. Actually, scratch that, for anyone of our generation and beyond. It's such a lovely, lovely story, and it's narrated by Tinkerbell, and at the beginning she warns us that it's not going to be a happy story, and yet we still hope, we still believe, as Peter does, that everything is going to be okay, because it turns out that before Peter loved Wendy, he loved Tiger Lily, the girl with the crow feather in her hair. And it's so well told, it's so beautiful, it's so tragic, because we know how it ends. We know that Tiger Lily eventually becomes just sort of this character in the story that is a part of this never-ending loop of Peter's life, where the pirates attack him, and then he saves the princess Tiger Lily, and then it all happens again and again and again, and it's why Wendy needed to escape. And we know that Tiger Lily couldn't escape in some ways, just like Peter Pan couldn't. And oh, is it beautiful. I highly recommend, and it has just stuck with me in a way that I can't really articulate. And it was my favorite book of the year. It was beautiful. It came at me so much to my surprise, and I'm so glad that I was able to read it. I don't know that I'll ever find another book like it, which is a bit tragic, but I guess that's just how life goes. But if you guys have a recommendation for me for any of these books that you think I'll like, please, please, please let me know, and let me know in the comments, what are your favorite books? I appreciate all of your guys' support, you sticking with me. You are lovely and you are beautiful, and I hope you're reading a lovely book and having a fantastic day. And I will see you in the next video, which will come out, I promise, less than 4 months from now. Bye!